A very good afternoon, friends. I extend a very warm welcome to our 165th webinar on a very important and vital topic, that is strategic human resource restructuring as part of corporate professionals' knowledge sharing initiatives. As we all know, that today's dynamic and fiercely competitive business landscape is characterized by rapid technological advancements. Consumer preferences are shifting, requiring the businesses to adapt and evolve, and the need for such adaptation and evolvement is more pressing than ever before. In fact, to remain relevant and thrive in such an environment, continual restructuring is not just beneficial, but often indispensable. It could be relocating a unit, acquiring or selling a unit, engaging in strategic business process re-engineering, revamping the manufacturing process, or facing an urgent need for closure, retrenchment, layoff, or the necessity to devise a VRS, or addressing recurring labor troubles. Understanding the factors and planning for effective management is therefore very crucial. At the core of any restructuring process lies human resource management, a critical function tasked with aligning the organization's workforce with its strategic objectives and operational requirements. HR restructuring, in particular, emerges as the pivotal aspect in this endeavor, serving as the linchpin that harmonizes regulatory compliance with organizational goals. Given the recent shifts and updates in labor laws, ensuring alignment with the new labor codes has become an urgent necessity. HR restructuring now encompasses a spectrum of activities aimed not only at optimizing the utilization of human capital within the organization, but also at aligning HR policies, practices, and wage structures with the updated legal framework. It goes without saying that the cost of HR or the intricacies of the cost of social security significantly impacts the return on investment and the overall business. By proactively engaging in HR restructuring, organizations can enhance their competitive advantage, mitigate risks, and position themselves for sustained growth and success in an ever-evolving business landscape. However, it is crucial to recognize that HR restructuring is an ongoing process that requires continuous assessment, refinement, and adaptation to the new labor laws and new labor codes. Failing to take timely action to align with these regulations can lead to awkward situations and even legal liabilities, which can be massive. Therefore, staying abreast of the labor law changes and promptly adjusting HR practices is paramount to maintaining compliance and optimizing organizational performance. Friends, we are extremely fortunate today to have with us two very renowned experts to address on today's topic, strategic human resource structuring. It gives me immense pleasure to extend a very heart welcome to our very distinguished speakers. We have with us Shri Anupam Malik, Partner and Head, People Services Corporate Professionals. Mr. Malik is former Additional Commissioner of Haryana and was also a member of core team for drafting the new labor laws. Post his superannuation, he has been actively advising industry on strategic HR restructuring. He is known for successfully handling of very complex industrial relations situations in industry. Sir, our hearty welcome to you to the webinar. We also have with us Shri Zorawar Singh, who is Director and CEO at Olympus Management Consulting Services. Mr. Singh is having an experience of over 30 years in HR, and he's known for his end-to-end HR restructuring and preparing organizations to handle disruptions. I extend a very hearty welcome to Mr. Zorawar Singh on behalf of corporate professionals. Friends, before I invite Shri Anupam Malik ji to give his presentation, I would like to announce that our knowledge sharing initiatives will continue, and our next webinar will be held on Friday from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. the 22nd of March on a very interesting topic, that is buyback, a strategic decision, in which we intend to cover buyback for unlisted companies as well as in respect of listed companies, its taxation aspects as well as the strategic aspects. May I now request Shri Anupam Malik ji to start his presentation. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Agarwal sir. Thank you. Pleasure being here. Learned people as audience. In the physical mode, we get more time, more opportunity to learn from the audience. But here it is, I will have a limited access to their questions only. But then, of course, we must share. So I will go to sharing my screen straight away. There you are. Am I visible on the screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir,
there we go.
Full slideshow. Yes, sir. Right.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. So there we go. Okay, friends.
Sir, there is some audio problem.
Not mystical, and more often than not, we just cow down and laugh at. Because my audio is okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Is this better?
Yes, sir.
The principle of governing the subject is.
सर आप अपना वीडियो ऑफ कर दो सर.
Basics first.
हेलो सर.
अरे लेबर लॉज कौन पढ़ेगा, बहुत मुश्किल है. इंडस्ट्रियल डिस्प्यूट. Okay, yeah, that's a better one.
Sir,
that's important. Now it's all right. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now we say that law, you don't get permissions. No. It's all a misconception. The Industrial Dispute Act is a very beautiful piece of legislation which has evolved ages, decades through the and it is the best guide. Let me come straight to the topic. Under the service sector, in the service sector, no permission is required for any such action as layoff, retrenchment, or closure. Only compensation has to be paid as per law. So that's why you see pink slip now and then. But then people have to plan their business in a very strategic manner, because today the business scenario is such that you make one mistake and your company is gone. So service sector is very, very sensitive. There the entire onus of decision making is on the employer, the owner of the company, and the law has the least of interference. You just have to pay the compensation, follow the law, and then you can lay off, retrench, and close the unit. But in the manufacturing unit, the conservative law is there, and permission of the government is required for retrenchment and closure only if 100 or more workers, and 300 in Haryana. And in IR code, the new labor code, it is 300 only. Now the biggest dilemma is, people say that you don't get a permission to retrench, lay off, or close a unit. Of course, the history has not been very good, but I have my hard experience. In Haryana, we've been giving permissions, and very meticulous examination of applications are there, and we've been doing it, rejecting also and allowing also. And in each case, the other party goes to the court, and we have learned through the challenging of the decision of the government in the courts, what are the plus, minus, ifs and buts while you take a decision. That's how I got polished while fighting cases in the High Court. Now, where the number of people are less than 100 or 300 in the case of 4-5 states like Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, and Karnataka, up to 300 is a reasonable number of workers, and a good industry can survive in that. You don't need the permission, but you just have to follow the law. Last come, first go, 25 G and H, and compensation has to be paid. Seniority wise, you have to people retrench people or close down, and you have to pay them compensation as per section 25F. And however, coming back to where the permission is required, no, where the permission is not required is okay. You just follow the law. But where the permission is required, say where you have more than 100 or more than 300, whichever is the case in the state, an application has to be made giving justification with supporting record that the requirement is genuine. The sections 25N for retrenchment and O for closure, and layoff is M. This is an application format of application given in the rules. You follow the book, and as law says, the courts look at 3 years before the application, the status of the company. Suppose you are in loss or you have very serious reasons. So they see the record of profit and loss or survivability, technical survivability of 3 years before the application has been made. And if it is not possible to run the company, the permission should be given, and not given, then you have a remedy with the court also, and you get it. Today, the courts are more active than the governments. They are more justified. They've always been, but on this subject, the courts have taken a very conservative view, and law has evolved. Now, coming down to below that, 50 or less than 100 workers, 25 FFA, you just have to pay again 25F, compensation at the rate of 15 days per annum worked, 1 month's notice, and that's it. Provisions for unavoidable closures, 25 FF, you need to read this very carefully. I have just made this slide only for the sake of reference, that you keep this at the back of your mind, that when a compensation has to be given, it is 15 days and per annum worked and 1 month's notice pay. Now, with all this, and then in the case of layoff, the law is very simple. And if the employer is not able to provide work within 1 hour, it is a deemed layoff. Now, I will mention somewhere here again, in the lockdown, the wrong order was issued by the Ministry of Home Affairs that everybody has to pay wages. That direction was challenged in the Supreme Court, and the Government of India got a buffing. When it is a layoff, deemed a layoff in the case of natural calamity. So I'm trying to say the The law is very good guide. It is supportive, and the case law is further good. Keep this at the back of your mind, and let's now come down to business. Why do you need this? How to plan and execute retrenchment and closure in a crisis to reduce liabilities. Now, I'm talking about a crisis. What is the exigency of requirement? Drastic actions, layoff, retrenchment, closure. Nobody starts a business to close down or lay off. Do we have documentary proof record to support the reasons? Do we need the permission of the government before such actions? What is the procedure to be followed if the permission of the government is not required? As I told you, just follow the law. 25F, single F, retrenchment, 1 month's notice, retrenchment compensation is good. That's all. And of course, the seniority and juniority has to be taken care of. What is the procedure to be followed and the permission is required? As I said, there is an application. You have to show profit and loss account, the balance sheet for the last 3 years, and how it is not possible to run the unit hereafter. What are the technical obsolescence if that the case be? What is the cost of renovation? Did the company management infuse enough money to renovate, infuse new technology so that the unit should survive? All these things have to be considered, and permissions are granted. If not granted, then you go to the court and you can get it done. But what are the limitations of re-emerging liabilities? You see, more than the law, you need the strategy and the wisdom inside. Once your square is complete, that this is the requirement. Now, how old is your workforce? Is it, say, 10 years, 15 years old? Are you in an isolated location where you went there for subsidiary? Are you in the middle of an industrial area? Is your workforce old, say 45, 50 years exceeding? Is VRS a better option? How and why? How do you compute the offering for a VRS? Imagine if the years of service is only 10, 15 years. It is good. Retrenchment compensation is 15 days per annum worked. 15 days wages per annum worked. Why not pay more? Let me tell you, you have big guns in the industry, so-called, HR big bombs. Ask anybody. In the public sector, why was 45 days as the benchmark? 45 days per annum worked. Nobody can explain this. People don't know where did the 45 days compensation come from? Let me tell you all today, this has been copied from the Western world, where the standard, like we give 15 days wages per annum work compensation, they give 45 days. We give 1 month's notice, they give 3 months, 6 months notice, or 1 year's notice pay, and just throw it out, throw the person out, finished. There is simply, you see, there they are very simple and straight. You pay the money and go. But in India, we have a very low level of pay, and even then, people are hesitant paying 15 days. But the VRS is a very good option. If you want to bypass the system, very easy. Younger people can be easily told to go away, look for a job. If a person is qualified, you cannot. If a person is from some other location, he's a local, he'll say, no. ईंट से ईंट बजा देंगे, हम तो नहीं जाएंगे. एक आदमी पढ़ा लिखा है. Suppose a person is qualified, you can tell him, look for a job, take this money. Fine, you can devise a VRS. I have handled VRS of 45 days, 60 days, 75 days, 90 days, and let me name the company. You see, Whirlpool and Tecumseh, they paid 108 days per annum worked. That is the limit of VRS. GK and Driveshaft paid 50,000 rupees, good old days. Escorts went through 4 VRS. So VRS is an option. You have to be wise enough to decide whether you have a social dialogue. Do you have good communication with the workers? Can you tell them the problems, exigencies of the situation? Why do you need to retrench or close down? The worker must be paid. Be very clear in your mind. The case where you are to close down for a crisis. Let's come to the next. Issues and liabilities of transfer of undertaking. You are going to buy a company. You are going to sell a unit. The section of Industrial Dispute Act is 25FF. I request you all to carefully go through it. Nobody can interfere in a transaction. The law says that if an undertaking is transferred from one owner to the other by way of an agreement, a business transaction, or through the order of a court, then the employer has to pay the employees, workers, as per section 25F. That means 15 days wages per annum worked and 1 month's notice as if retrenched. Please note the words, as if retrenched. It is not retrenchment. It is a discharge. It cannot be challenged. Now the proviso of 25FF says that, however, if the services of the workers are transferred to the new employer with the same terms and conditions, then no such payment need to be made. Now here I need to tell you, the entire law on merger and acquisition changed. In the High Court of Calcutta, a unit was transferred to another. It was a Philips unit. And they simply transferred with the same terms and conditions of service. And the workers challenged it. You know, you have a lot of comrades there. They challenged it. They said, no, you should have told us. He says, no, the law does not require, 25FF does not require that I need to inform you or take permission or take you into confidence. I am not changing your terms and conditions of service, so I simply transferred the service to the new employer. No. They went to the High Court, rejected. They went to the Supreme Court. Do you know what the Supreme Court says? Supreme Court there they said, Your Lordship, my right to employment, my right to life includes my choice of an employer. I am not a bonded labor. You can't simply push me over to another employer. You have to give me an opportunity of being heard and take me in confidence whether I want to go to the new employer or not. Supreme Court says yes. In the case of Philips, you can all read that case law. Now comes the paperwork. This is where we come in. How do you manage that? What are the essentials of the agreement to sell on this issue? You have to incorporate proper clauses in the agreement to sell. And when you transfer the services, then you need to inform the workers and give them an option to take that full and final dues if they don't want the transfer of their services to the new employer. What is law if there is a strong union contesting the move, as I have told you? Is there a liability with new employer to re-employ and workers discharged by the old employer? There is a liability. If it is transferred, it has to be part of the agreement to sell. You have to company secretaries watching this presentation must note that the agreement to sell has to be very clear on the terms to sell and the liability of the workers, the services of the workers, and must be very clearly mentioned in the agreement to sell. What all are essentials of paperwork to be done in each case, as I told you. When and how is VRS a better option? No, I handled a case in which the services were transferred, but then you had a union. They were ready to fight for nothing. We gave them an option. You want to take your full and final dues, take it. Let me say it was Himachal. And the court came down. They challenged the move in the High Court. The court came down very heavily. You were given an opportunity of being heard that if you don't want to go to the new employer, you could take your money. Why you did not take it? They gave them 10 days. Well, okay, your lordship, less time was given. Do you want more time? He says, yes. Another 1 week. And why did you go on strike? The union was pulled up. Ask your clients to report for work on Monday, or else they'll be liable for legal action. Can you imagine the High Court? Employers are weak. High courts are very strong. The law is very supportive. And in the end, it turned out that a good number of workers wanted to go. They took their final full and value, they went off. 40% of the workers went away. Just imagine. So VRS is there. I have handled cases where we gave VRS also. Restructuring to adapt to requirement of business process. Now, this is another reason. As I said, there is a crisis or there is a requirement to sell the unit or acquire a unit. But now here is another reason for restructuring, to adapt to requirement of business process reengineering or to strengthen the skill sets to improve product productivity. Sometimes you have industries where you have old workers continuing for so many years and they've learned the working. But once you want to introduce new technology, what do? Suppose your client says that, no, the business process is not to be like this. I want the material to be finally checked here only. My people will stand here and your material should be delivered at my factory as it is. The old workers will not adapt to the new business process, or the old workers may not be qualified enough to learn the new technology. What do? Abolition of a process could be there. Introduction of a new process could be there. Using competent old, you could do it. Abolition of process, you have to, getting the surplus or redundant workers out. How do you do it? Introduction of new process by using competent old workers or to replace unqualified and untrainable workers. You have to do it. How will you do it? Manpower has become old and unable to adapt to skills and procedures, or unable to bear the workload for increased business. Sometimes the process becomes new. There is an assembly line process and physical movement is there, and the old workers are not able to cope up with that pressure. You will have to redo the system. You will have to restructure it. And each situation, each unit, each business will require a different solution. But you have to apply your mind. I'm trying to tell you the various methods of doing it. Influence of notorious elements. Sometimes everything is all right. And sometimes you have notorious elements inside or outside who resist the process of training or even change of business process. ऐसे ही चलेगा यहाँ तो. आप हमारे को कैसे धक्का कर सकते हो, हमारा रोजगार कैसे खराब करोगे, ऐसे ईंट से ईंट बजा देंगे. You know that comrade kind of, you have to manage it. If a change of service, condition of service is there, as a notice of section 9 under section of 20, notice of 21 days under section 9 of the ID Act been given, do you need to give it? The management has to assert itself. Don't hide things. Share everything with the workers. Skill mapping should be there. Make a survey of workers, and those who do not fit, to tell them, see, you have to go. New framework will have to, they don't fit in, shifted up. Somebody is very good at supervising. Make him a supervisor. Chalega. Somebody is ready to work. साहब नौकरी चाहिए, साहब रोजगार चाहिए, साहब ठीक है, नीचे हेल्पर लग जा. मशीन पे काम नहीं करेगा, साइडवेज किसी और मेंटेनेंस में लगा दो, नहीं तो उसको पे ऑफ कर दो, थ्रो हिम आउट. You have to retrench him, you have to pay him off, you have to give him a hefty VRS. How you have to manage each situation will decide. Of course, VR is a very important tool. And the most important, social dialogue is a master key. That feudal attitude in industry, in progressive business, is not possible. Feudal attitude must go. You have to share your changes with the workers, take them into confidence and support them. If somebody is good but not fitting in, support him get into some business or support him to take VRS and settle down. If your workforce is old, they will be too happy to take the VRS. They are 50, 55 plus. I've just handled a unit in Mumbai. In 1 month flat, everybody wound up. The problem was what? Some managers were instigating the workers. Can you imagine that? So if somebody is doing it, watch the work managers on the shop floor who may be creating problems. And social dialogue, if that is transparency is there, those people, those hurdles will not be there in your path, and you will be able to manage the situation. The needs of business will be met. Now, introduction of new technology. In business process, the new technology and the new product line has to be brought into the plant. Highly qualified and trained workers are required to, as operatives, to replace the old workers. Question is, new workers to be recruited with different qualification and terms and conditions of service. Opportunity for change of skills levels. What to do with the old workers? Does the law help in any manner? What is the human angle? As I said already, I'll give you a hard example. JCB in somewhere in 2003 saw that the multi-station, very complicated computerized machines had to be deployed to improve the process and quality of the product. Can you imagine they brought in BTech to work as machine operators? And those old, those ITI and diploma holders, they had to be sidelines. They had to talk to them. See, you are not fit for this machine. You need to take your yes. They made a hefty offer. The workers went away. Similarly, Scots also did it. They brought in new machinery, and the old workers were told, because they were of an age, it was easy to convince them. But social dialogue was the method. What to do with the old workers? Some workers are very good at supervisory work. They were kept, and rest were asked to go. The human angle has to be addressed. The management has to assert itself, as I said. Skill mapping and all that, social dialogue, master key. I'm just repeating this. Restructuring to address recurring industrial relation. Now, this is another situation. When the industry gets old or is entrenched in an area, rural area, or some politically sensitive area, there may be elements outside or inside the unit who are less interested in working and more interested in their own politics. Or there could be reasons, deficiency in quality of working conditions. Why is there labor trouble every now and then? Why is there a work stoppage every 6 months? You need to understand, you don't afford to lose. In today's competitive world, as Mr. Agrawal put it at the very outset, you can't afford a work stoppage. So analyze the reasons for recurring industrial relation problem. Assess the magnitude of the problem and the impact. And if there is an external or extraneous reason, somebody is blackmailing, somebody is just creating trouble for some political reason, then the remedy, the deficiency of management, and especially communications and work environment, has to be reviewed. You must improve the work environment, remove the deficiencies, and talk to the workers that, see, we have improved things. Solution through social dialogue. Again, the remedies, if the reasons are internal, whether there's an individual who's bent upon creating problems, or there is a group of people. We in India have another problem. Caste. ये ब्राह्मण के लोग हैं, हम जाट हैं, ये वो है, शेड्यूल कास्ट है, फलाना है. This is the worst thing which is there in our Indian society. In industry, this is actually gone. But somewhere, you still have these petty problems, and the worst kind. That has to be addressed. And the people who are creating problem must go. There has to be zero tolerance of caste discrimination or regional differentiation. Zero tolerance. You have to improve your environment and make it more business-like so that you don't tolerate people creating problems. Remedies, if the reasons are extraneous and external, has to be very selective, that you don't touch people on the wrong side. If there is somebody outside, he has to be told not to interfere in the business process. If there is some kind of gunda element, the law has to be invoked against them, and a solid stand has to be taken. Somebody says, no, it is very difficult. Those days are gone. Today we have the law on our side. The government is supporting the industry. Gunda Raj cannot survive anymore. The law is helping always. You have to take legal action. But recurring industrial relations problems must be tackled. These are a total waste. If you see the people around Delhi, NCR, you know how Gurgaon industry has evolved through all these problems. They have seen everything. They have seen renovation, there were mergers, acquisitions. They have seen extraneous elements also. They have seen internal trade unions. They have seen politics entering into it. People have fought the case. The law was invoked and people are thrown out. How to practically do it? Now I am telling you a thumb rule, a generalization. First of all, HR mapping. Belonging. Where do the workers belong to? Qualification. Analysis of reasons for age, wage, stage. A person is old. If your workforce is old, then you should look at reasons. If they are local, try to handle them in a different way. If they are, say, from faraway states like Bihar or UP, you offer them money. At the best, they say, नहीं साहब थोड़ा पैसा और दे दो. अगर qualified है उसको बोलो बेटा ये पैसा ले और तू और नौकरी ढूंढ ले. You need to have a HR mapping of competencies. Where do they belong to? What is their age group? What is the... Now, sometimes some industries have very high wage levels. Those workers will not get that kind of job outside. So you have to help them out. Get similar jobs or get a job somewhere else, not in the area. Being in the area is another problem. So then you have to analyze and look for a solution accordingly. And social dialogue is the best remedy at the first, in the very outset. The choice of right remedy, extraneous and external causes, you have to look for it. It's not possible to, I can tell you the legal methods. The other methods sometimes have to be resorted to. The local elements have to be told to settle their issues amongst them. Sometimes you have truck unions interfering. You have to handle them. Law is on your side. All those industrial areas where they had truck unions interfering have been taken care of. Listing out workers and opinion makers to support the plan of the management. If you have social dialogue, you can tell those opinion makers to support the management. If you don't have social dialogue, nobody will come to help you. Opinion makers will help you. Creating a push, insecurity, that you lose your job. And a pull, that you get money outside, you get a good job. I'm giving you VRS. A pull and a push factor is necessary for any movement, any restructuring. A worker who's young, who's qualified, needs to be told कि देखो ये कंपनी तो बंद हो जाएगी, ये कंपनी बिकेगी, नया मालिक क्या करेगा मुझे मालूम नहीं. तेरे को पैसा लेना है, पैसा ले, घर में जा, कुछ अपना जमा कराओ और उसका इंटरेस्ट खाओ, और तू क्वालिफाइड आदमी है, कहीं नौकरी ढूंढ ले. और पैसे के लिए पुल दे रहे हो आप उसको, इंसेंटिव दे रहे हो, he'll go. Listing out shop floor managers who may be guiding this is a very common experience I have seen. You always have some manager who is creating problems. You have to identify those people first. Let me say that on record, in my experience of, say, from 91, I have been registrar trading. 80% of the unions are got made by managers. You have to be very careful with the shop floor manager or some element in the unit who's instigating somebody. Somebody has a political link outside and instigating the workers to form a union. Or if you are restructuring, he will create problems. Once you have the social dialogue in place, You have the material, the information very clear, known. Some information gap, some communication gap is still left out. The grapevine is very important. सूत्री छोड़ते हैं, छोड़ना बोलो, सबको बोलो ये कंपनी गई. Let there be, this is also part of insecurity. It is also part of pull and push. There are better opportunities outside. Leave this job, take the money and go. If the management is giving you an opportunity, take it. The grapevine, very important. Announcement of the transfer, promotions, punishment, posting, VRS. There is something called a CRS. When this VRS business started, the trade unions protested. There was a CRS. Well, a compulsory retirement scheme. Let me make it very clear. A case of Maruti was there of 2000 VRS. In 2000, they had given a VRS. The worker went to the High Court that I have been compelled to take a VRS. The High Court said, okay, even if it is accepted that you were forced to sign the VRS and you were given this check, who forced you to get the check in cashed? A VRS is nothing to do with the labor laws. A VRS is a private contract of a person taking money in lieu of resigning from service. The High Court said, you have encashed the check, means it was your will and sweet wish to take the VRS. VRS cannot be challenged in a court of law. So then the liability, the entire onus comes on the employer, that you have to be transparent, you have to be communicative with the workers, you have to be very fair. If there is a skilled worker, if there is a skilled person who is not skilled, he has to go, or he is not your requirement, he is technically not qualified, he must go. You have to be fair enough to pay him off. Pay him off. If you're not fair, you have to have problems. You will have problems. But today's business environment does not allow you to have problems. You need to move on. You have no choice but to move on. You have to restructure. You have to run your business. You can't wait. Strategic HR restriction for any purpose is possible with wisdom, strategy, and by addressing the sensitivities of workers for success within the scope of law. In so many words, I have explained all this, and I have told you social dialogue is the key. Transparency, objectivity, and addressing the sensitivities of the workers. Talk to them, convince them, they will be with you. Pay them well. Workshop for financial education of workers is key to success. I'll give you an instance. Whirlpool in the first VRS gave big money. And at that time, I was telling the workers, the union leaders, don't take the VRS. The job market is very bad. You will not be. They took big money. A person who had not even seen 1 lakh got 10 lakhs, 8 lakhs. They went away. It was a disaster. Whirlpool had to face a lot of music. There was a social uprising that they have given money and the workers are on the road. There is no employment. Another year, after 1 year, they announced the VRS. But before they announced the VRS, they called finance consultants. They called IDPI, SIDPI, LIC, and those mutual fund, these bankers, and tried to tell the workers what to do with that money. Social dialogue. The workers who were competent, they were able to were competent enough to run their own business. They were given loans by the SIDPI and how to start your own business after taking the big money from the company. The second time and the third time, after these financial education of workers was done, the VRS was a super success. The landmark. Now the present generation of people in Whirlpool may not remember that, but I have seen the hard days of 2000 to 99 to 98 to 2003. 3 VRS was there, and I have seen the transformation. How VRS can be succeeded, how it can be a big success, how social dialogue can be a success. Support and guidance for professional mobility of works is another key to success. You have to help people find jobs, vocations, how to settle down in life. You have to do the counseling. The HR managers, this is their job. They have to do it. This is about, beside the law, the strategy, addressing the sensitivities. This is the human part of the restructuring, where you can bloodlessly, without any controversy, without any conflict, go for restructuring, addressing the void created by functions of the OSH. No provision of government is required in layoff, retrenchment, close up to this. This is a review. Advantage of provision of fixed term employment. This is a new law. No, let us look at the new law. Is already addressing these issues. Contract labor, which you've been misusing, abusing, no more. It's not permitted. Contract labor is allowed only in core, non-core. Read section 2P. No permission of the government. The flexibility is already allowed in the new law. You don't need the permission of the government required. With 300 workers, layoff, retrenchment, closure up to 219 workers is already there. So you can easily run a unit in less than 299 workers. Advantage of allowing fixed term employment. Suppose you have a contract of an order which is going to last only for 6 months, 8 months, 1 year, 2 years. You will have to specify that the worker is being employed for, say, 6 months, 8 months, 10 years, 10 months, or 1 year or 2 years for execution of that order. So you have the option. Minimizing the implication of equal termination clause, which is now gender neutral. Deployment of women labor in the night shift has been allowed. In the manufacturing, it is already allowed. The Chennai High Court had given a judgment, and Haryana and I think Rajasthan is also allowing the employment of workers in the night shift. Wage structure would be objective as per wage code. Social security benefits. I leave this open to my friend Zorawar to address this. That everything is becoming so simple in the new labor codes. But again, the law is not a substitute to brain work. Wisdom, strategy, being sensitive, and being human. And there is no substitute to social dialogue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Very beautifully explaining the intricacies of restructuring, and very good advice given, particularly with respect to drafting of agreements, proper documentation on restructuring agreements, restructuring plans, and proper planning of retrenchment, proper planning of any restructuring process, whatever way it involves and affects the HR function. Thank you very much. Now, may I invite Shri Zorawar Singh ji to give his address, and I will request him to also address how the organizations should prepare themselves for disruptions which are now taking place very rapidly. Over to you, Zorawar Singh ji.
Thank you, Agarwal Saab, for this opportunity, and welcome my friends who have joined us on the webinar today. Mr. Malik has very pinpointedly and specifically discussed about the restructuring which has been happening so far. Now, when we think of restructuring, or we look at the cases of restructuring which have happened in past, normally one thing which comes to our mind is the first part is crisis. So normally when company goes through a crisis, we think of restructuring, and the restructuring happens because there is a financial liability, or the cost is going up, or things are not working out. Why I am being asked to touch on the Social Security Benefits Code is that when the industry gets short of money, first casualty is the Social Security benefits of the workers. So when we are short of money, first step what employers do, delay the PF payment, you'll save 24%. Delay the gratuity bonus payments. Delay the ESI payments. Then obviously hold the salaries. So the social security, which is meant to be there in the time of crisis, is the first thing to go for a toss when crisis actually happens. And that is when the restructuring actually starts happening. Now, there is a new type of restructuring. Now, well, everybody of us understands this. And when we look at our own company, though my company, it's good. We are not in a crisis mode. So restructuring may or may not be applicable to us because we are all happy, hunky-dory, everything going in. So there's a new concept where we need restructuring to be happening is because of the new labor codes. So because of the new labor codes, as Mr. Malik has told in previous slides, there are 4 or 5 things which are happening new. One, that the contractor in core activities has to go. And every one of us is employing contract labor because it's a very cost-effective thing to do. Another thing which is happening is the definition of worker and employer, which has changed and broadened its scope. And we have now new ways of escaping PF ESI liabilities by calling work from people as work from home workers, assignment-based workers, contractual employments, consultants. One of the telecom company, they hired 100 consultants actually to avoid PF ESI. People are coming up with various such definitions. So this is another thing which has been addressed in the code. Now, government is saying that if contract labor has to go in core areas, what I will do with all the people, because I need permission at 100. So good part is that along with that, it has also thought of while getting the new codes is that they remove the limit of 100 and increase it to 300 so that you don't require permission, or you can have without taking permission people go to adjust the contract labor which was there in your core activities. So there's nothing to worry on that. Then there's another thing that if you are still worried why, okay, I don't need permission, but why should I immediately take all the contractor employees on my rolls? So you go for a fixed term employment. But fixed term employment is not something what most of the HR people, they ask from me that, okay, that's a good idea. I'll hire everybody on fixed term now onwards. And if I hire everybody on the fixed term employment now onwards, I can fire anybody anytime. No. Fixed term employment is basically a in between, go in between given to you so that you can immediately, your operations are not disrupted. You put the people on fixed term, then you start sorting them out. Who are good people, they can be taken on your regular employment, and they cannot continue to be in fixed term employment year after year in a manner like that. The other 2 things I'll discuss in this presentation. Let's understand and the Social Security Code, and then I'll also cover how it is helping our restructuring. Now, so far the coverage have been very, nobody understand who was covered under what is covered, but this new Social Security Code has given a table in which it says everybody has to register irrespective of size. That means anybody and everybody, even a CA's office, anybody who's running own office with 1 employee, 2 employees, 3 employees, everybody has to get has to get a registration. PF will be applicable once you cross a number of 20 people. ESI will start once you cross 10 people. Gratuity will be applicable if you are a factory. That means you have 20 people. If you are not a factory, then at 10 people, you have gratuity being covered. We have maternity, again similar, that in case of a factory, you get a maternity covered at with 20 people. And for a non-factory, for a shop or any other establishment at 10 people, you have to get covered under Maternity Act. Employee compensation is valid for everybody. Social Security has been extended, and now work from home, platform workers, they are also covered in that. Then Employment Exchange Act, which we normally think is not applicable, is now being given teeth, and now everybody has to share their proposed employment information or hiring plans on this to this portal, and everybody has to do whether they hire from it or not hire from it. Now, thinking of the various via medias we thought of engaging employees, they have covered everybody. These numbers are the definition numbers under section 2. So they have defined under 226 who is employee, under 231 who is exempted employee, who is a gig worker, who is a home-based worker, who is an interstate migrant worker, who is a platform worker, unorganized worker, wage worker, contract labor. So there is no loophole left where you say, okay, this way, that way, perhaps it will not be applicable to me, or that thing will not be applicable. They have given a complete coverage and a complete definition. Well, the concept of worker, everybody says that's a worker, labor laws are for workers, is now gone. We have a conceptual change. The word worker is now replaced with word employee, at least in social security benefit. Now, who is an employee? You must have attended seminars to understand who is an employee, but it's very simple in new codes. Anybody who is not an employer is an employee. Let me repeat. Anybody who is not an employer is an employee. That means everybody is an employee under these codes. So there is no ifs and buts about it. Earlier, this is anybody employed in an establishment. So we would say that, okay, home-based workers, but my marketing staff who doesn't come to my office, work from home, is not an employee. But the definition is now changed to say anybody employee engaged by the establishment. So there's a change in the word in the establishment and by the establishment. So person may or may not has to be physically inside the establishment to be employee. Anybody engaged by the establishment is an employee, and that is for all type of benefits. Now, another thing is, what is the purpose of basically the new codes? Why there are certain changes is one, they have also streamlined the definition of wages to come up with the wage code. The major litigations we have seen or major confusions employers are having is normally the question they ask us, give us a wage structure so that we are EPF compliant. On what factor we have to give EPF? Half of the world is not aware what is the wage for EPF, how the wage structure has to be, what has to be deducted, what has not to be deducted. So they have defined in itself the wage definition and streamlined. I'll cover that up in next slide. Another thing is when EPF, PF, ESI inspection teams come, we are not sure how much records we have to show them. So EPF is wherever, as per their own whims and fancies, they even call for records for last 20 years, 13 years. But luckily under the new codes, there is a limitation period of 5 years. They will not go beyond that unless something really gross is figuring out in those 5 years. There's another option that for the people who work, like in Corona, some people, they started their own small setups, and then people like me who sometimes work off their own or sometimes go and join a company on a wage and salary. So what happens to our pension? So for that, they have given a portability that during the period when you are self-employed, you can go for national pension scheme. And when you come to join the job, you can tell your employer to deposit your EPS contribution in the national pension scheme. And there have been proposals to reduce the worker contribution load also in certain industries where workers' contribution will start after a while, their deduction will start after a while. So coming back to the changes in the wages, what is called wage? Wages, except there is no concept of basic wage in the new codes. There is something called, to cut down the confusion, I'll call it something called base wage. So with base wage and allowances, there are only two components to it. HRA conveyance is not a base wage. So whensoever I say wage, or I have to pay according to the wage, for example, maternity benefit, I have to pay the wage, it means only the base wage, not HRA and conveyance. But does that mean I can keep base wage as 10 rupees and HRA as 50 and conveyance as 50? No, they have also clarified that if your total allowances, that is HRA, conveyance, and any other allowances, including the EPF, your EPF share of employer share of PF, employer share of bonus, overtime, without will reimbursements. Some people, they give their accountant a fixed 5,000 rupees because they have a failed job, or a sales guy another fixed 25,000 because he's travel in the market. He's not supposed to give you bills for that. They are also included in this setup as allowances, plus any commissions. All this put together, they cannot exceed the total money which you are going to get. So exceed 50% of the wages means exceed 50% of the emoluments. So that means that base, whatsoever you're calling a base wage, cannot be less than the allowances which you are giving. And if you are trying to give over and above some things, the 50% of this has to be considered as a base wage. Let me elaborate it a little bit more. There is no, the minimum wage restriction has already gone away with Group 4 court case which came recently, but that doesn't mean you can reduce the already fixed base wage or basic wage. Another thing is that it gives higher PF benefits to the piece rate and commission-based workers, because in service industry, I have seen in telecom, in call centers, that the salary is normally kept at 15,001 rupee because to get them out of EPF coverage, which is again a misnomer that whether they'll be out of coverage or not. And then sometimes they earn incentive of 25,000 because they made a deal in US, 30,000, something like that. But under the new codes, your total carry home salary divided by 50 will become your base wage. And you have to be given benefits on that base wage of PF, ESA, and everything else. On the other side, this also reduces the load on ESI part, because right now we are paying ESI on basic plus HRA, but once these codes kick in, you need not pay on HRA. You will only pay on base wage, which will be common across all the benefit calculations. Again, let's think of a way. For example, you employ 8-hour guards, 3 shift, 24 hours, but we seldom see that there are 3 guards for 24-hour shift. There are only 2 guards normally. The industry practices, they are hired for 12-hour shift each. So what happens to their PF? They are paid PF on the base wage of 8 hours. The rest 4 hours are put in as overtime for each of them. So that means one of the person, the third person's PF wage is saved by the agency, either by the contractor or by the employer and contractor together, or with that system. But under the new codes, once your overtime is going to be higher than the base wage, that means if you are employing anybody for 4 hours, the person is anyways shooting the total earnings. So 50% of that has to be the base wage, which means the PF will now get sorted out. The person will at least get PF for 12 hours on pro rata. So this is little calculation which we need to understand once we go back home. Again, we had this NAPS, Skill India, lots of schemes coming in, people approaching you saying that, okay, you hired these people through us, you need not pay EPF because, you know, there's a loophole scheme. And lots of companies have come down under massive EPF penalties because of that. But in the new code, there is no such loophole left. This is any apprentice training under any scheme or under standing order is not excluded except for under the Apprenticeship Act. One. Second thing is that so far we were thinking that anybody who's above 15,000 salary and first-time employee is exempted from EPF, but under the new scheme, there is no exemption under the EPF. EPF has to be paid to everybody, even if it is a first-time employee above 15,000. So, and then currently we have up till 15,000, it is mandatory. Beyond that, it's voluntary. This, once the acts are notified, the scheme will continue for 1 year. After that, but then it is being proposed that base wage, entire base wage, you have to pay EPF on the entire base wage. So that means that voluntary 15,000 freezing the PF contribution at 15,000 will go away. Another thing is that the pension scheme, which higher pension scheme things which we are going and fighting with the EPF right now, or EDLI scheme. In the new court, they have categorically said that if you are having a base wage above 15,000, your pension scheme and EDLI scheme will stop. So that means we are lucky part, the people who have retired during this, before the new courts come in, that will be still covered by old pension schemes, and we can still think about higher pension schemes. But for the new employees, they'll not be covered. They will not be covered under pension scheme once they cross 15,000, so that their period of 10 years for getting eligible will be at stake. ESI will be also paid on the new defined wages. So if some people are thinking that they'll increase the limit of ESI from 21,000 to something else, but with the new definition of wages, that means up till 42,000 somebody is earning, his base wage has to be 50%, that is 21,000. And if base wage is 21,000, the person is covered. So that means now coverage is automatically inbuilt in it. Higher coverage is automatically inbuilt in it. So if we have base wage of 20,000 and 20,000 worth of allowances to reduce our wage load, the person is still covered. That means people up till 42,000 can be technically covered under ESI. People who are on minimum wages, their OT will not become base wage unless it exceeds their own base wage itself. Again, some people were asking that, how to be exempted from ESI. We usually recommended that you pay quarterly payment, because ESI has one clause which says anything which is not paid at an interval not exceeding 2 months will be considered as a wage. So we used to give quarterly incentives to escape the ESI liability. But under the new wage schemes, in the month in which you are giving that money, I'll again look at the total earning of that month divided by 50%, divided by 2, and then see whether it's more than the base wage. If it is more than the base wage, it will become the base wage for PF ESI. So it will be iteration kind of calculation, where every time you put it in a base wage increases, and then it becomes a higher base wage for calculating higher PF, higher everything. We are paying advance. For example, some companies are, for the contractors, paying bonus every month as advance bonus, or fixed allowances, or paying telephone bills. They are also to be calculated as part of allowances for the calculation of total earnings. So they are only excluded up to the base wage of 100%. If they exceed the base wage, the 50% of it has to fall back in the wages. Now, this section 61 of EPF Act and section 31 of ESI Act, it says employer to pay EPF ESI for every employee, direct or through contractor. Every people here will not realize what I'm trying to say. Everybody will say, no, in our company, contractor is depositing PF for its own people. This clause is already there in the current law also. In current EPF Act and ESI also, there is a clause which says contractor money has to be paid by the principal employer. But what happened in past, that some people in one of the forest department's case, they were not paying directly the EPF, so the contractor was paying. They went to Supreme Court. Supreme Court looked at the manual, EPF Act, and said, where is the definition of contractor in the EPF Act? There is no definition of contractor in the EPF Act. So then it interpreted that a contractor as per EPF Act means somebody who's not having a code number, because if somebody is having a code number, is an employer. So based on that judgment, everybody thought that because there is a judgment, and since only those who don't have a code number become contractor, the current system is being followed. But in the new codes, the contractor has been defined. So that means that Supreme Court judgment will get overridden. If contractor is defined in that code, and the code itself says that principal employer has to pay EPF for every employee, direct or through contractor. That means the principal employer has to pay for every contractor the EPF himself under his own code. Don't worry, they'll not become your employees by doing it. And it has to be now followed because the loophole in the earlier EPF Act, which had no definition of contractor, is now gone. Well, don't be worried, because the contractors which you have in mind right now will also not be there, because we just discussed that contractor employees are anyways not allowed in the core functions. So you'll be only having security and housekeeping contractors at the most. Rest all you have to either put on fixed term or on your own rolls. So your PF anyways for those people is going to be on your own account, on your own numbers. For the housekeeping and security, you won't mind, because EPF portal will have you have to take their contractor employee and then deduct their PF and deposit at your own account in EPF. And then you can deduct that from the contractor bill and pay the rest. For the accident part, the employee is covered. Even if accident happens because of non-permitted risky behavior of the employee, even then the employment compensation has to come on us. So this accident will also, if the accident is from once a person starts from home till the person reaches at home for the employment, on the purposes of employment is come from home and reaches home, during the entire event, that accident will be called arising out of employment. Again, I have seen sometimes a new worker comes in a factory and we have a time of 10 days to register for ESI. And normally, sometimes we have uncovered employees in the premises and accident happens, and then suddenly says, oh, okay, this employee, he just came 5 days back, so we are registering the person in the during that time only, and then hence he is covered in ESI. Hence, we are not liable for compensation because the person is covered under ESI. But ESI, like any other insurance company, is wiser now. If somebody is not registered, even during the allowed time, but accident happens on a particular day, then you cannot register that person. The accident has happened, person is not registered, or even if on the first day accident happens, though he was to be registered within 10 days. But unfortunately, if accident happens, the employer is the unfortunate, because they will not then allow that insurance benefit. But don't worry, then the new code, employee will be given all the benefits which they will bill to the principal employer and recover from the principal employer in total, not the compensation. So we cannot now cheat the ESI or EPF by backdating the registrations, or in the case of event getting a backdated insurance. That part has been taken care of. In certain areas, if, for example, this happens mostly in textile factories, that we have high volume of workers and nearby a slum where high volume worker stays. So if because of that slums condition erupts where there's a high rate of sickness, and ESI finds out that high rate of sickness or high rate of sickness in the employer provided colony, or because of employer provided work conditions, there are mosquitoes at employer site. So ESI will pass on entire liability in such case also to the principal employer and say, okay, we are paying them benefits, but we'll directly bill you for your negligence on not giving them a healthy environment. Now, EPF inspector and ESI inspector will not blackmail you by determining the liability. They can only propose for the ESI, they have to move the court, and court will judicially decide the liability which is going to be there. In case of EPF, we already know that the beneficiary has to be identified properly, only then they can put the liability onto you. In case of gratuity, we understand for fixed term contract people, there's no qualifying people. For the fixed term contract, you have to pay on pro rata. For journalist and sales promotion employees, it's 3 years. Sales promotion employees and journalists, so far the act said, are those employees who were in pharma or medical industry sales reps. But in the new codes, while merging, they have deleted that industry-specific clause. So that means, and it is something to think about. So that means even an electronics company or in a telecom company or in your company, if there are sales promotion employees, they are a special category of employees who will be entitled to special category of benefits, additional benefits vis-a-vis normal employees, including eligibility for gratuity after 3 years. Maximum limit on gratuity, we understand 20 lakhs, which keeps varying. On gratuity, there's a conceptual change. Nomination employee gives, but so far we think that employee has to come and apply for a gratuity. But under the new codes, it is your duty as an employer to give a notice to the person saying that your gratuity is due, this is due, and if person is making application, even after that, that means there's some issue, and then in that case you have to loop in authority the payment under the Payment of Gratuity Act 2. So it is, even in Supreme Court, one of the recent judgment, it is said that it is employer's liability to tell the employee that his gratuity is due and he has to be paid, and if he doesn't do it in 30 days, there will be interest element on that besides that. The common question, gratuity is payable after 4 years, 6 months, 4 years, 240 days, or 5 years. Is again, everybody understands it's 5 calendar years and nothing less than that. Now, there is also proposal to take a compulsory insurance in case of Gratuity Act. It was also there earlier, but it was never notified. In the new codes also it is there. Let's see if it gets notified or not notified. But we know that we cannot book gratuity as in liabilities till it is going to be due in the immediate subsequent year. But if it happens, if the insurance becomes compulsory, so we have to take that load of gratuity payable, which so far we cannot book as liability, and it will in that particular can be get shown in the liability columns because we have to anyways pay to the insurance company. So that particular year, it can be a dip in assets and liabilities columns. Maternity benefit, again, lots of questions on maternity benefit, that to whom to be given, if the person resigns, if the contracts get terminated before end of gratuity, if we terminate an employee before the pregnancy thing. It says anybody who has worked for you for 80 days becomes eligible for maternity. Person has to be paid 1 month, 1 month before 6 weeks of expected days, date of delivery. The person cannot be put on heavy work. Person has to be paid based on average wage of last 6 months. That is not last 3 months. That means it is not the total wage. It is the only wage part which we are now saying is the base wage which has to be paid. It can be taken at maximum 8 weeks prior to delivery, and total we understand it's 26 weeks which we have to give. And if it is paid by, if the entitlement comes from ESI, again, it is not if the person is covered under ESI. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if the person gets entitled under ESI or disentitled under ESI, whether covered under ESI or not, we have to pay. Now, we have in the new codes, we have to pay in advance, in the sense that person can claim in advance. And anyways, we have to pay for the entire 6 months or 26 weeks within 48 hours of delivery. Even the Act says that in case you terminate somebody and dismiss somebody, and because of that terminal or dismissal, person was, or because of that end of contract, person was, except for that process instance, the person could have been entitled for maternity. The Act says then the person will still remain entitled if the Act gets terminated or dismissed or discharged or whatever happens. Maternity bonus is there as before. 1 month additional leave is also there as before. We have to also provide a crèche if 50 employees are employed, not women employees. If 50 employees are employed, even if you have 50 all male employees, you have to have a crèche. But then there's a local crèche rules which are coming in place for every state, where you can pool up within 5 kilometers, a set of corporates or industries, they can pool up with a common crèche facility in the vicinity. Again, no discharge dismissal during maternity leave. Discharge, termination during pregnancy still be allowed to be paid maternity benefit. Accident compensation, we always thought. Again, there's no duality. If employee files a civil suit, then your liability goes over. And if the person files a compensation before the compensation commissioner, the person cannot file a civil suit. So vice versa, only one claim can be done. And sometimes we see in factory, we says, okay, something has happened to you, let's give you a compensation and sign an agreement with the employee. We try to give a compensation and sign an agreement. It says that any direct payment made to employee for compensating out of the accident or disability arising during the employment will deem to be not paid. So you have to, if you are paying somebody for disability or death or compensation directly, do not do that. It has to be through the employment commissioner. And any order of employment commissioner, the appeal lies only with High Court. Then we have construction cess, which is already there. If we have gig workers, we have to pay 1 to 2% of annual turnover, which government will define depending on the gig worker nature of work, or 5% of the amount paid to them, whichever is higher. Intimation of vacancies. For all vacancies above 90 days of duration, we have to compulsorily intimate. Interesting part is penalties. For the repeat, there is a minimum imprisonment of 1 year or 6 months if there's a repeat offense. But then repeat offense in case of not paying the money deducted from employee to the EPF, ESI, or non-payment of maternity, or non-payment of bonus, or non-payment of gratuity. If it is a repeat offense of employer, then there is a minimum imprisonment which has to be there. Otherwise, the penalties are simpler. If you deduct money not pay, then imprisonment is there. If it is something else like not fulfillment of returns, not maintaining records, then it is just a fine. But obstructing authorities will again be imprisonment. So that's all from my side. Thank you. So I am open for questions. Over to Mr. Agarwal.
Thank you very much, sir, for so lucidly and clearly explaining the new concepts, the new definitions under the new labor code. Thank you very much. We indeed, all of us are highly benefited out of it. Sir, we have a few questions. I'll go over to Mr. Malik first. It's more by way of a comment. VRS cannot be enforced unless it is FRS, that is Forced Retirement Scheme. And that is where the problem exists. Secondly, the redundant labor remains there and smart lot takes VRS and goes away. These are some of the flip-flops of VRS. So to achieve the end objective, the management has to resort to coercive measure, and from this viewpoint, the clash starts. Your comments, sir, first, then I will take comments of Zorawar Singh on this.
Whoever has commented is well experienced with the vagaries of this profession. Somehow I have handled all these situations not once, several times. I have used a very sophisticated word called pull and push factor. And I said CRS using FRS. See, there's a very thin difference. But as I said, what I learned from the Whirlpool case, the first time they did was total buyout. Even the workers are not thinking, they are jumping into the well. Second time was a wonderful one. People were educated and smart people went away. Number 3 was a selective. Third experience was selective. So-and-so, you are offered this, or else you are transferred to so-and-so place. You don't need to do FRS. Don't call it FRS. Today, every company has its branches all over the country. Your service is not required here, your service is required there. Don't offer a VRS. Simple, don't offer a VRS. Transfer the man out, let him ask for it. When I handle things, first of all, suppose I am closing down. I first offer VRS. And then I talk of closure, retrenchment, which will be paid only 15 days per annum worked. So what do you want? You want 90 days VRS or you want 15 days compulsory throw you out? As I said, you have to first do the HR mapping. Age, weight, stage, belonging, there's a matrix to be made out. And you need a lot of experience to understand. How do you devise that? After HR mapping, you have to see your financials. I'm making a stepwise. That what is your budget? What is your requirement? How many people need to go out? All of them? See, like I transferred shifted the entire unit from Himachal to Ahmednagar, a reputed company. Everybody was offered. And after that, we said, okay, now you are transferred with the unit. Nobody is ready to go to Maharashtra. You see, I have complied with the law. The law says, in the case of section 25 FF, that is where I learned my lesson. That you must take the worker into confidence. He wants to take the full and final, take it. I'm giving you extra, more than 25F. Somebody doesn't want to go, then you're transferred along with the unit. Problem arises when I am doing something inside business process re-engineering and say technology induction. I learned from the case in 2000 when JCB was doing this and they inducted. When sophisticated machines are coming in and skilled manpower, highly qualified manpower coming in, you see, you need to, again, age group. How many people are going to go out? The unit I handle in Mumbai, most of the workers are 50, 55 years of age. Why should I pay for the past years? I said, okay, 3 years of salary given. Granted, go home. It is very, very situational. HR mapping, a matrix must be made out. Every situation is different. Do not call it a one yardstick. No benchmark. Every time it's different. I have handled situations in Mumbai. I have handled situations in Bangalore. I have handled in Himachal, where those truck unions come in. And of course, I have handled in Noida, Haridwar. And of course, during my tenure in NCR, very difficult. Every time, if the matrix is made, then you know what to do. A differential treatment of every type of worker is necessary. As I said, sensitivities, social dialogue, help the man who wants to go out. He's old, let him go away. Somebody who's smart, he's young, you want him. Tell him, I'm going to retain you. Give you more money when you remain in service. After this, let the people go, I'll take you at a higher position. As I said, up, down, sideways or out. You need to request the audience to recall. You need to note every word and comma I'm using in my slide. I said up, down, sideways or out. This will be decided by the matrix you make and you calculate who has to be given heat treatment, cold treatment, so on and so forth. You may calling it a CRS or FRS is not enough. Social dialogue and making a HR mapping is very, very essential. After all, 35 years in government, I'm now 6 years into practice. I have done enough. Even when I was in government service, I was doing, helping some friends outside in other states how to get rid of things. So each time I developed this, it was not an overnight, flash of a bulb. Over the years, I saw these are the factors. So mapping is very necessary.
Thank you very much.
Sometimes some clients, they approach, they says we are a single unit factory. So transferring and these things don't work out. So let's understand first, do we have a transfer clause in our appointment letter? Well, we are a single unit. How can be there a transfer letter? Why not? I suggested one of the clients to put a transfer clause like this, that in interest of company, you can be transferred and posted at the vendor's end or the customer's end, depending upon a requirement. So if you are a single unit, you can transfer to the vendor located in Kerala to do the inspection at site at the vendor because it's there in your appointment letter. Or you can set, so if you have a permanent buyer who has a plant in Chennai, you can say you should sit there and coordinate our logistics there. I'm transferring you there. So, but these
He's given
things
he's given a pinpointed answer. He's given a very pinpointed answer. See, I was only alluding to it with a larger picture, but he has given a very pinpointed answer. Even if you are a single unit. So you have to be wise enough to draft your appointment letters. So many things. It cannot be one line answer. Yeah, you have to have the HR mapping and you have to see the situation. And what is your need? Why do you want to do it? If you are trying to do something, hanky-panky, no. That's bad. You'll get caught somewhere.
Right. Thank you, sir. Thank you. There is another query. What will happen to the existing liability of PF or ESI, employer-employee contribution, when the company goes into compulsory insolvency resolution?
Very important. You just gone through it. Are you answering? Should I do that? Ravan?
Well, it's a fact that like any other creditor, obviously certain creditors are given preference over the other, but everybody takes a haircut. Even in that case, PF, ESI, gratuity, everything will take a haircut accordingly. And if unit has gone away, how will they pay if there is nothing to be paid and it's a limited liability company? So there's no solution to it. Only thing is that why we wait till that time? EPF is already disconnected from employer now, and for gratuity, if we have a compulsory insurance, the exit can be secured.
I've recently handled a case where the company went in to the NCLT, was taken over by another finance company. The previous liabilities stood there frozen. The next amount, can you imagine the insolvency professional, resolution professional was in charge. He deducted the amount and did not deposit. He's in trouble. Nobody will stand by the resolution professional if he bypasses the law. If the deduction has been made, it has to be paid. But when the amount, the salary is not being paid, wage is not being paid, deduction is not being paid, made, then finished. No liability. You stop there. You just stop there. Insolvency is something very dicey. Where the whole thing stops, as Robert said, everything stops. But if the resolution professional comes in and starts working and the salaries are paid, deductions are made, they must be deposited. Otherwise, the provident fund will come to the throat. They will extract their pound of flesh, finished. They will make you pay. Simple as that. The law demands. And you will have to pay. Now, after that, when there are no wages during the period of not working of the unit, now the unit wanted to revive. He says, we want to give something to the worker. Yes, there is a compelling situation where there was a layoff. The entire company went for a liquidation. Don't pay. Once you pay, the meter starts running. There is a clause, there is a law on layoff that the management can enter into an agreement with the union for payment of a certain amount, because layoff after 45 days, you can go for retrenchment. But here is a case where the number of workers is far more than 300. Then what they did, enter into agreement, and now they're paying the workers as layoff till the unit starts. It's already 6 months. Very fair. The workers feel that they are being taken care of. Okay, the company was in a bad shape. Whatever the resolution professional did, a lot of allegations of hanky-panky, swindling, fraud, cases going on in the court, prosecution has been launched, FIR launched. If the deduction has been made, be sure it has to be deposited. Otherwise, it's a case of fraud, misappropriation of money. FIR will be launched 420. He'll be inside. Now the new management which has taken over is paying only layoff compensation, and where PF is not payable. And Zorawar has made it very clear. Once the whole thing stops, that's it. And once the gratuity and all, old companies have a trust. They pay gratuity from there. But if it is not there, then every day everybody has to go according to the ratio proportion set up by in the NCLT, and you get a haircut. Even wages, the liabilities, the previous liabilities, they all get a haircut. You see, company secretaries, I'm trying to rope in the company secretaries, a very important role to play. The HR people cannot get into all this, because the financial matters, the legal matters at the level of restructuring, selling the company out, NCLT, what is the HR going to do? He is on the other receiving end. He has to actually, see how we can wind up. So company secretaries have to be very careful with the agreements, the drafting, and the restructuring part in total.
Thank you, sir. I think there are no more participant questions. One of our participants has requested that video of participants should also be shown. I will check with the organizers whether it is possible technologically, because the number of participants in our webinars is very high, and probably because of that, it may not be possible to show the video of the participants. Sir, thank you very much, Anupam Malik ji and Zorawar Singh ji, for so nicely and lucidly taking us through the requirements of restructuring with respect to HR. We know, and as I said in my opening remarks, restructuring is inevitable. It is a continuous process. Businesses have to keep on changing with the changing times. Technology is changing. Even the regulatory framework is undergoing changes very rapidly. So restructuring, if it is planned properly, documented properly, I think Mr. Malik laid a lot of stress on the proper documentation, proper entering into agreements, carefully draft the various clauses, then probably it becomes very smooth exercise and a win-win situation, both for the employers as well as the employees. Thank you very much, sir, Malik sir, and Zorawar Singh sir.
Pleasure.
Friends, as I said in the beginning, the knowledge sharing initiatives of corporate professionals will continue. And in that series, on next Friday, 22nd of March, we have a very important topic, that is buyback, a strategic decision. In this particular webinar, we propose to discuss, we'll have experts who will deal with the buyback, the strategies to be, the focus will be on strategy. What benefits the companies get, what are the situations in which companies should resort to buyback, and whether it is an unlisted public company or it is a listed company, what would be the taxation? We'll have a taxation expert who will take us through the taxation aspects. So we look forward to meet again on next Friday, 22nd of March, 2024. Thank you very much all. Thank you, sir, Malik sir, and
Thank you.
Zorawar Singh. Thank you very much, one and all.
Bye.
Oh, sorry, Paris.